Good day, everyone. In this video, I'm going to do a photo editing run through of a photo I took of an incredible aurora that we had on around the 11th of May this year. Now, this was an incredible solar storm, and what you're seeing in this photo is basically the image that's come out of the camera. Now, it was that incredible. You don't usually see this amount of detail by eye, but the camera is able to capture colors and light much better at night than we are. So I thought it'd be good to do a bit of a run through on how I might edit this image within Luminar Neo. So in this case, I took this photo at night, obviously. If I zoom in a little bit to the image, we can have a look and see if there's much noise. You can sort of see in the water there is a little bit of noise, but it wasn't a hugely high ISO on this. Nonetheless, I'm going to apply noiseless, and it's suggesting to apply a low adjustment because it thinks that maybe it doesn't need that much noise reduction. So I usually find that those tips are pretty good. And in this case, I think that's probably a good start. Now I can do the before and after, and you'll see the before. There's a little bit more noise compared to the after. Sort of pixel peep in at this level though, to be pretty honest. So I'm not going to focus on that too much. Now, I think it's probably also worth considering, do I need to crop this? I want the emphasis to be really on this horizon more than anything else. I'm just going to bring it in a little bit, but I don't want to take too much out of this image either. So I'm going to leave it about there. It would have been fine as is, to be honest, but I'll do it this way. So I'm going to go super sharp, and I'm just going to apply a bit of sharpness to this image just to see how much of a difference it makes. Now, I don't really think it needs a lot, especially in this type of image, but it's always worth considering at least. And I'm doing this on a MacBook Pro, which is certainly not a new machine, so it is a little bit slower on mine, but obviously your mileage will vary based on how new your machine is or otherwise. So now we can kind of get into develop, and at the moment this will apply develop globally. So if I increase the brightness, it'll increase the brightness for everything. If I decrease it, it'll decrease it for everything. So it's always a bit of a balancing act with this. I'm going to decrease the highlights a tiny bit and increase the shadows just a tiny bit. And I might just bring the blacks out a tiny bit and brighten it through the whites. Now you can sort of see the green start to blow out if I take that too far, so I'm going to leave it about there. I think that's a good starting point. Now I could consider Enhance AI, and Enhance AI will obviously just enhance everything, but I don't really like exactly what that's doing. And obviously if I apply it at 100, it's going to look extreme and silly. If I apply it less, it will be perhaps a little bit more realistic. Now, I could just leave that as is. Actually, I might. I like that. And off, back on again. I'm going to leave that with how I've done that there. There's a couple of things in the background I'm not happy with, and I'd like to remove those. So to remove this, I'm going to go into Erase, and I am going to just make this a bit smaller and just erase those there. There's one over here as well. And so now it's applying that erase, and you can see it down the bottom saying apply the erase, and it's taken them out. Now that's just a bit of a rough one. I'm not looking into that too deeply. I could also, if there were dust spots, remove dust spots at the same time using that. Don't think there were a lot in the case of this, so that's fine as is. Now, there are a couple of things I don't like in this. I really want the focus to be on that light, which is fantastic, but I don't like how bright everything is on these sides. I think that distracts. So I'm going to go into develop in this case, going to go to masking, and I'm going to take a brush, and I'm just going to brush along here. Now the point of this is just I want to darken it a bit, so just kind of pull focus back a little bit. Now I'm doing a very rough mask in this case. Obviously, the longer you spend doing it, the better it's going to be. But I really want the focus to be the sky and the water. Now I can go to erase and I can just track the water, and that way it'll pull anything I've missed there. I think that's probably pretty good. And I can just go to adjustments, and I can do two things. I can either just reduce the exposure, or I could also take the shadows and highlights as well, possibly even the blacks. I probably need here a bit more because I seem to have taken that out. So if I turn that, that's what it was before, that's what it is after. But you can see I've also got a bit up here that probably I shouldn't. So that's maybe a bit more realistic like that. So I'm a lot happier with that. The focus is on the sky and definitely the water, which is what I want it to be. But there's also one thing that I think I like to try and represent what I felt that it was like while I was out there. And in my mind, the reflection on the water was a little bit brighter than what it is. So again, I'm going to go mask in, and I'm basically just going to mask along the water. Again, this is just a rough mask. Obviously, the more accurate you are, the better, but for this, that's fine. So I could just increase the brightness, but obviously the brighter you go, the more you're going to lose those colors as well. So in this case, I'm going to bring the highlights up. I'm going to bring exposure up a tad. I'm going to bring the whites up too, and just drop the blacks a bit. And you'll see it makes it just a little bit brighter, but I don't want to go too much further because you'll see that green. I'm starting to blow the green in the reflection out a little bit if I go much further. So I might even just drop the highlight down a bit and the exposure. Often, and I say this a bit, but often do something and then reduce it by about half, and you may find that it's much better than it actually would have been otherwise. Look, I'm pretty happy with that. Maybe I want to tweak a little bit in the sky. In that case, again, I could go to develop brush, or I could mask, but I'll just do a brush in this case. And I could tweak this. I'm going to undo that though, because there is another option that I haven't shown you yet. And this one is a linear gradient. So what a linear gradient does is it basically kind of gradients or feathers that adjustment. So in this case, where the red is where the adjustment will be applied, and it'll kind of gradually fade out down the bottom. So this is a really good way of maybe you want the top to be more bright, or the exposure to be less, and you'll see how it's sort of gradually working its way down the image. So in this case, maybe I want it to be, I don't know, I'll work on the darks a bit. Maybe make it a little bit brighter up the top. And I could also consider, tweaking the curves and contrast as well. And so you'll see it's worked on the contrast a lot on the top of that image. And as it comes down, it's applied much less. So it gives you a rough idea on how that might actually work. I could apply a vignette. In this photo, I don't think it's really worth it though. I think for the most part, that's pretty much all that I wanted to do. So I'm going to leave this as is. I'll do the before and after. And so this is the before and this is the after. It's not completely different to what it was before. It's really just trying to emphasize the things that I think were important. The downside, as you can see though, is that by increasing the contrast and everything else, you do lose some of the stars and everything in the background, but that's obviously a trade-off. So you can see it's a big difference from the before to the after. And I've just done this entirely in Luminar Neo using a whole range of different tools from Develop, Enhance AI, Super Sharp AI, and then Noiseless RAW as well. So I hope this has been useful for you. As always, if you've got any questions, please feel free to ask them in the comments.